All right. So we have beta patch notes, version 0.107.0. I am pretty nervous for this patch in general. If you've been watching the stream for the last 2 weeks or whatever, you probably know how I feel about Aeon Glass. I think it is probably the best thing to happen to the game since the release. The way that you have to warp your deck building and think about it the whole run makes the run a lot more engaging and means I can't just turn my brain off after like getting a good start in Act 1 or whatever. And that's kind of what was happening before. I saw a lot of people, not only in chat, but on like Reddit and whatever, Discord, complaining about that boss. So I fully expect it to be nerfed. I'm hoping that it's not gutted. I'm okay with like small nerfs, but I do think this game needs enemies that force you to build decks around them and not just a generic good deck. We need like unique problems to solve so that you can't just add every block card in the entire run on silence and just weaken the enemy and win, right? So I think the Dorito and the Aeon Glass were a really good step forward last patch, and I'm expecting a step back, but we'll see what else they do. Okay, they say, another bi-weekly beta patch is here. This one's a bit smaller as it's intended to lay the groundwork for moving the beta branch to the main branch. Okay, so maybe next time we're expecting main branch update. Therefore, these updates are mostly focused on stability, a lot of bug fixes, UI, UX, QoL additions, and performance improvements, along with just a few balance changes and art additions. Like this new defect animation. Without further ado, let's dive in. Content and balance. Enemies buff Skulking Colony now gets +1 strength on its strength gain turn on high ascension. I think this is completely fine. They basically changed this last patch to have 80 health and have the damage threshold be 20 and not block. So basically all the characters can meet a 4-turn kill now, especially if you are just sort of needing to rush it down. Like you just don't get the stuff to block it, right? And you basically are never going to take more than like 30 in this fight. And that's assuming like worst possible case. And I think that's totally fine. Like elites do need to threaten to kill you from full if your deck like cannot answer it at all. You need to be able to make decisions about whether or not you should take the elite in the first place or like spend money on a potion to solve that problem or add a card that you otherwise wouldn't. I think this is like a small step in the right direction of just making this enemy slightly more challenging without completely making it kill you if you just don't have great answers. Okay, changed Aeon Glass no longer applies the Ebb debuff. Now gains block on its Ebb move, single hit, instead of its increasing intensity move. I believe that the move Ebb was the one that reduced your dexterity and strength by 2 or 3. That is probably the part of the boss that I didn't care that much about. Largely, I just ignored it. Once you're set up, you kind of just don't care about this, and you're more focused on the wither. What is the word I'm looking for? The wither pressure, making the fight unwinnable if you go out past a certain length, right? The main thing about this boss is it's really just a damage race, or can you exhaust these statuses? And this didn't feel that thematic. So, okay, of all the nerfs they could have done, this is the one that I'm like most okay with, for sure. I am completely fine with this. I was really scared they were going to touch the withers. Maybe they will lower, but that seems very good to me. Probably a good middle ground to make people happy, but not killing the boss identity and still making it something I have to think about the entire run. Potions and relics. Buff the boot relic. Damage increase now also applies to Aussie attacks. That's cool. I think that's more of a bug fix than a buff, really. And this relic's really rare. You only get it from the trash heap. It was a Spire 1 relic, and it wasn't super great there, but it had some niche uses. I think one of the main things is it's really just like +1 strength on Shiv cards. And Silent has like Leading Strike now, which basically turns Leading Strike into a Blade Dance with a boot, because your initial hit's also going to do 5. So there's some niche uses. As far as Aussie attacks go, I'm struggling to think of Aussie attacks that really hit for less than 5, especially since you're not getting weakened ever, or Aussie's not getting weakened, rather. So you're not really going to be hitting for less than 5 most of the time on Aussie. Fetch, maybe. Ironclad. Buffed Juggernaut card, damage increase from 5 to 7 to 6 to 8. This card definitely needed this. I'm not sure how pickable this makes this still. Like, Ironclad often only plays really big block cards, not really like small spammy ones. I think the main interaction with Juggernaut is really Rage and playing like Pommel Strikes or Flash of Steel or something like that. That just doesn't happen very often. I still don't think this is going to be picked very much, but it's like a niche damage solve if you really need it. It's always been a desperation pick and probably still will be a desperation pick. Okay, buffed Monarch's Gaze card. Energy cost decreased from 3 to 2 to 2 to 1. That makes it way more pickable. This is already kind of pickable in multiplayer, but yeah, going from a 3-cost power to a 1-cost power is pretty crazy. I don't think it's going to be amazing, but it is a way to scale block in a way that's not just your Child of the Stars and Pillar of Creation. So I don't mind this at all. This is like basically a card that's never picked. And a nerf that I expected a while ago is Reflect. Block gain decreased from 16 to 20 to 15 to 20. So I really like this change, actually. This started at 17 for those that were unaware. But what they did is they didn't change the upgrade value. And this was a card before that you were literally never going to upgrade. And now it actually is. Like a block upgrade being 3 blocks, 17 to 20 or 21 or whatever, or 4 block, 16 to 20 or 17 to 21, how it used to be, is not very significant. But 5 block is a very big difference, especially with Frail. So this is kind of a nice change just to make this more like a thought about, do I need to actually upgrade this card instead of just like slamming it into my deck? I still think the number is probably too high. Honestly, you could go 14 to 20 and it's still a really, really good card. But yeah, giving a card a reason to think about the upgrade just detracts from being able to add it to every single deck, which is really nice. Okay, Necrobinder. Buff Sikkim card. Summon increased from 2 to 3 to 3 to 4. This is the card that summons whenever Asti attacks that turn. It also does some damage. I don't think this card was picked very often, but this number increase is very significant. It's probably not a card you're upgrading very much, but essentially having the card be upgraded right away is really good. And there are some niche decks where you have like a poke in it and an unleash, of course. And that's probably enough to warrant this if you're really desperate for damage. Unfortunately, Necrobinder in general, at least from our understanding, just doesn't pick very many attacks. You really can just scale damage from picking basically only block. So I still don't think this is getting in the deck very often, just because adding any attack card, no matter how good it is, reduces your block density. Necro has this kind of concept of needing to overblock every turn. And the second you start being unable to overblock, you lose your Asti HP, and that causes you to basically not be able to do any damage. So you can think about sort of Necrobinder versus Statue. You're not really able to block 25 a turn or 18 a turn or whatever it is when it's weakened, like 17, very consistently. And so Necro, if your main plan for like the rest of the entire act is just store block and make Unleash big, that fight can threaten you if you don't have any potions or relics to answer it, just because of the fact that you're not able to store Asti HP, and so your Unleash is never scaling to a point that it does any damage, right? Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of things that really pressure Necro if you're able to overblock, but the whole point of this is that that block threshold is very, very important. Like an enemy dealing 12 damage instead of 17 is suddenly something that you can block with like 1 or 2 good block cards. And then you can do damage while not spending all your energy on block, and also needing to play 1 less block means you don't brick as often. And so the consequences of adding any card that doesn't just say block on it is pretty big. It's very unlikely you're going to have a deck that Sikkim is going to proc more than maybe once a turn. That's not something that is generally going to get added. There's probably some niche cases, especially with Transform 2 as a Niao, that you can transform into Asti attacks, and then suddenly this becomes more pickable. But yeah, I don't expect this to move the needle a ton. I'm sure they'd had internal data that said this card was just like not getting picked very often, and that was for good reason. It's just not very good. Buff the Scythe card. Damage increased from 3 to 4 to 4 to 5. That's a big change. This card was basically early Act 1 or Niao only. If you saw this end of Act 1, it wasn't going to scale fast enough. I still don't think that's changed very much. Maybe now this can be a late Act 1 card as well. There's just some thresholds you kind of need to hit to where the Scythe is like actually OHKOing enemies. Like maybe against the Decimillipedes, right? You want this to basically be at 50. And I assume that having like a 5 to 10 damage increase by the time you get to that elite is going to be pretty important. And especially with like Necrobinder's access to Vuln. We'll see. This was just probably going to get picked in the same scenarios that it was getting picked before. Maybe that threshold has been shifted a couple floors later now. But you're not often seeing rare cards inside of an act anyways. It's very, very uncommon in this game to see rares due to Ascension modifiers. So we'll see. Usually you see rares either at the beginning of the run or at the end of the act, and this is a really awkward card to pick at the end of Act 1. We'll see, and probably need to do some testing with it, but I don't think it's going to do very much. Okay, Quality of Life. During the Gremlin Merc fight, if Gremlin Merc didn't steal any gold but Fat Gremlin escaped, the player now receives 50% of the normal gold reward instead of 0%. Very interesting. I don't think this situation is coming up very often. The actual reward for the fight is like 8 to 10 gold, basically. So weird consolation prize, probably only happening if you have like 0 gold. If you're able to burst down the Gremlin Merc so it doesn't steal any gold, then I don't really know exactly how you can't kill the fat gremlin. If your deck is able to deal that much damage that quickly to kill him, you probably killed the guy. And also, if you go into this fight with 0 gold, who cares? Like 4 gold, whatever. I guess they put it under quality of life because it's really not going to impact balance of the game at all. So that's fine. Okay. User interface and experience general. If errors occur on run start, a pop-up is now displayed instead of a black screen. Implemented preferred ascension for random character option. Ancients, when Vaku tells you how many times you visit him, the number he says is now accurate. That's very funny. Pale's Flash Relic now visually increases the maximum energy amount shown in your energy counter. For example, if you have 3 max energy before Pale's Flash triggers, your energy counter will show 4 out of 4 instead of 4 out of 3 after Pale's Flash triggers. So this is probably just going to help people remember that they have the thing. Otherwise, doesn't really do anything, obviously. Enemies. The Wither status card preview upgrade level now matches the upgrade level that Anglass is actually on. Necrobinder. Sacrifice card now previews how much block it will gain so that it's easier to plan with effects like Dexterity and Frail. This is actually really nice, and I had an issue with this sort of card. Stuff like this is always nice, just so that you don't have to do like tedious tasks. Yeah, go ahead. Art. Added epic art for Devastation, the 12, the Giant. Added defect power-up animation, added new Soul Nexus visual effects. Writing, updated translations for various languages. Bug fixes. General, if you have Steam Cloud turned off, cloud files no longer overwrite local ones. First floor of Act 2 can no longer be a question mark room instead of a fight when carrying Spoils Map quest reward card. Okay, I've seen this happen a few times, actually. I think it's been known about for a while, and I guess they just now got around to fixing it, but always nice to have that. Okay, fixed card energy cost sometimes showing the wrong value when its cost is randomized. Fixed card returning to the wrong spot in your hand after deselecting them during a card selection. Card draw is now stopped after combat ends during the draw phase. Overgrowth Act now plays both of its music tracks instead of always the same one. Wait, that's kind of cool. I guess that there was like a hidden soundtrack that we didn't know about. We'll find that. Music no longer restarts twice at the start of a run. Ancient. Fix an issue where if the player has Vaku's Whispering Earring Relic and it auto-plays Void Form card, it could sometimes continue auto-playing cards on the player's next turn. Funny. Fix no new Pepe's Diamond Diadem Relic, resetting its count after Hellraiser Power plays cards at the start of a turn. Enemies. Aeonglass Wither status card no longer briefly returns to your hand before you discard your hand at the end of the turn. Can no longer upgrade Wither status cards with armaments or drain life cards. I thought they already fixed this, but I guess I haven't seen it yet, and I just heard about it when the boss first came out, but I thought they fixed it with that hotfix with like the pyramid retaining the Withers permanently. Fixed an issue where after killing Spectral Knights, cards that would normally be ethereal could sometimes become non-ethereal. That's funny. Fixed creature and boss visual effects occasionally failing to appear. Fixed Flycandid Spore effect lingering when its attack is interrupted. Fixed Fossil Stalker visual effects continuously playing in the bestiary. Fix the Living Fog encounter name in the death quote. If you kill Gremlin Merc before he steals any gold from you, the reward screen no longer says mugged, even if Fat Gremlin escapes. Okay, they hit this encounter twice, apparently, with some changes to make it feel more immersive, I guess. Potions and Relics. Fix an issue where if the player hatched Berdana's Egg at a rest site while the rest of the deck was upgraded and they had Miniature Tent Relic, they were unable to upgrade the newly added Bird Swoop card until the next rest site. Okay, that was like never going to happen unless you got the event that upgraded all the cards in your deck and went to 1 HP. Whatever. Fix an issue where if Pantograph Relic healed the player above 50% health, Red Skull's Relic strength increase would still apply until an attack was played. Okay, that's very weird. In Spire 1, we actually had a cool interaction with Red Skull and artifact charges being able to block the strength down effect as you went below the 50% again. So what you could do is if you had artifacts, you could go under 50%, heal with something like Reaper, get your strength, go under 50%, heal again with another artifact charge, and keep getting permanent strength. Kuro L actually made a really cool puzzle about that in Spire 1. I wonder if we are going to have people that make puzzles in Spire 2, which would be kind of cool, where you set game states and with like Run Resumer or whatever, which I think is a mod now. But you can make puzzles and sort of do weird interactions like that. It'd be cool if people want to do that with Spire 2. That's completely unrelated, but let's move on. Snecko Skull Relic now always triggers before Unsettling Lamp Relic. Fix visual errors with the outline of some potion assets. Events. Gnarled Hammer Relic can no longer be traded at the Relic Trader event. Fix Perfect Fit enchantment not working correctly if you play Reboot card while the enchanted card is in your hand or draw pile. Fix War Historian Repi event not removing all duplicates of Lantern Key card if you have more than 2. Silent. Fix an issue where if the player had Unseizing Top, played Hidden Daggers card, and discarded a Sly card, Unseizing Top could cause the player to incorrectly draw a card before the shiz were added to their hand. That's a long list of things. I wonder who found that. Necrobinder fixed an issue where if the player played the lethality card and the first attack of the turn had a replay, the replay attack would incorrectly display lethality's buff damage amount before correctly dealing its base damage amount. Multiplayer fixed crash when using potions in multiplayer due to state divergence. Fixed rare issue, which caused incorrect cards to be shown when obtaining cards at certain events. Nightmare card visual effects no longer plays for all players. That's a funny jump scare. Okay, performance. Reduced stuttering when combat effects appear for the first time in a run. Modding. Base game no longer deletes progress from mods that are removed or errored. All right, so yeah, pretty small patch overall. Lots of bug fixes as they were talking about because their goal is to push this to the main branch. I think there's one really important thing to talk about here, though. The Aeon Glass changes are probably coming to the live patch, which is really good. I'm glad that they're not being too scared here. I assume that this patch is going to get pushed next week and actually like make it to the full servers, right? We might get some weird reactions, but I think for the most part, the people that are having freak out reactions are freaking out about the beta branch changes before they even hit main, right? So I'm glad that they're keeping this boss as kind of like a difficult thing to deal with and not just removing all the enemies that people complain about, because I don't think that this nerf really makes the fight that much easier. In reality, you still have to build your deck to kill it. The debuff is not what's going to be owning you. And I think that no Dorito change is really good. Like, we need enemies like this, as I was talking about in the beginning of this patch notes, that are going to make you think about the run the whole time. Because if you compare it to something like Spire 1, we have the Heart and Spear and Shield, and also have double boss at end of Act 3, right? So basically every run you expect to have to fight all the Act 3 bosses because you couldn't actually see the Act 3 bosses in Spire 1. You would just get a random second one. So you always have to prepare for all of them. You always have to prepare for Spear and Shield, and you always have to prepare for Heart. And if you know anything about Spire 1, some of those fights were really messed up. Okay, like the Heart is a very unfair fight. If you put a new player into the Heart, like let's say you got Spire 2, ported it into Spire 1, whatever, backwards, but Spire 1 ported it into Spire 2, and you gave people who have never played Spire 1 Spear and Shield fight and Heart fight, they would be complaining till the cows came home, okay? Everyone would be freaking the hell out because of how stupid and messed up those fights are. But in reality, at top level play, those fights warped the whole game and made it interesting. Because if you just had to beat the Act 3 bosses, those fights can be cheesed in a lot of ways. They don't actually test the deck in a way that makes you not do degenerate stuff like you kind of can in this game right now. And Aeon Glass and Dorito are kind of the first enemies in this game that don't allow you to do that. Part of the reason why Spire 1 is so great is because Act 2, we have all the elites that just kill you from full. Maybe Asuka can find the clip and put it in if she's willing to, where I walked into Gremlin Leader with a 110 max HP defect with Fairy in the bottle and died from full with a very good deck because he summoned the worst possible pattern and I drew like completely horrendously, right? I lost 150 HP in an Act 2 elite. And if that happened in Spire 2, people would be so upset. But I think that for the health of the game, it's really good to have fights that can just screw you like that. You need to be able to walk into the fight and have like the fear of God put into you. If that doesn't happen, then every deck looks like 2 patches ago silent decks. Needing to build around all the elites, needing to build around the Act 3 bosses, needing to build around some like really messed up fight makes the game fun, because I now have to think about, like when I'm playing silent, there's probably going to be an over-explained run out where I talk about basically the entire run, how every single card reward screen, I'm thinking about how does this impact my Aeon Glass matchup. And so when I have to think about that, but also think about the short-term problems of how do I solve the Frog Parasite while also not screwing my Aeon Glass, that's a fun thing to have to balance. When I only have to think about what's right in front of me and be thinking that the late game is going to sort itself out without much effort, the game is really boring. Not like really boring, but you get what I'm saying. It's like a 7 out of 10 instead of like a 9.5 out of 10 like Spire 1 was. That's just my feelings about why it's important to have these tough enemies in the game, and I like that they are keeping some difficult challenges in without really tweaking it and putting it out to the masses. Not just beta branch people, but the people that are playing the main branch. It tells me that they're willing to kind of make people upset for the sake of having a better game, which I really appreciate. So if any devs are watching this, thank you. Hats off to you. Please put more fights like this in the game that are gonna like make people upset as a knee-jerk reaction. But I see so many people now on Reddit being like, oh, I kind of miss Stormmaker. That's gonna keep happening. The more fights like this you have in the game that are really tough, when you take them away, people are gonna realize like, oh, I kind of liked having that like final boss feeling. Like I walk into Aeon Glass and it feels like a final boss. It doesn't feel like I walk into like, you know, release patch test subject or release patch door and it just rolls over and dies. I want to get my face bashed in by this boss a few times and have to actually solve a problem. And not much has changed. If anything, the game just got easier. These are all buffs. But I'm okay with that. Largely, it's the design philosophy I care about and not necessarily the individual changes that I care about. It's not important to me that they get all the numbers right or get everything perfectly right now. It's just that they don't buckle to pressure and just remove something that's really good for the health of the game because people are complaining. You need to be thinking about these endgame problems the whole run. And people are like, oh, but my like Shiv deck gets countered by it. It's like, well, don't build a Shiv deck then, you know? Like, don't build a deck that you know is going to lose to this enemy that's in the game and you're going to see it 2 out of 3 runs. Like, you know it's there. So just think about it, right? If you know it can kill you, if you know the decks that like struggle, answer it with some other ways. Like, I can answer it by putting 2 poison cards in my deck. I can answer it with mixing and matching different things or holding a potion or other things, right? There's a lot of ways. Other than that, I don't think very much has changed in terms of balance, but just keeping the Aeon Glass as is such a nice feeling. Like, removing this ebb debuff just doesn't really matter. This is going to be really, really cool if they keep this in the game to have to think about, and it just makes me want to play more. All right. Hopefully in 2 weeks we see this push to the main branch and they don't nerf Aeon Glass again. Looks like they didn't massacre my boy. So we will see you all in a little bit, and stay tuned on YouTube for a few upcoming videos that are really cool. So yeah, see you next time.